My name is Dr. Rebecca Holt, and I have spent my career studying psychological trauma and the effects of isolation. But nothing I encountered in my professional life prepared me for the inexplicable events that unfolded during a research project at Whispering Pines, an isolated mental health facility deep in the forests of Oregon. The horrors I experienced there remain an unsolved mystery that continues to haunt me. Whispering Pines was built in the early 1900s and abandoned in the 1970s after a series of strange incidents and unexplained disappearances. The facility had a dark history of questionable treatments and experiments on its patients, which led to numerous rumors of hauntings and paranormal activity. My team and I were granted access to the site to study the psychological impacts of long-term isolation on the patients who had once been housed there. The facility was a sprawling complex of decaying buildings surrounded by dense forest. The air was thick with the smell of damp and decay, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. As we arrived, an uneasy feeling settled over us, a sense that we were being watched by unseen eyes. Our team consisted of 5 members: myself, Dr. Michael Harris, a fellow psychologist, Laura, a historian, David, a tech specialist, and Anna, our local guide. We set up our base in the main administration building, a once grand structure now overtaken by nature. The plan was to stay for a week, documenting any evidence of paranormal activity and gathering historical data on the patients and staff who had lived and worked there. The first night passed uneventfully, though the sense of foreboding grew stronger. The following day, we began our exploration of the facility. The wards were a labyrinth of narrow hallways and small, windowless rooms. The walls were covered in faded graffiti and strange symbols, and the air was filled with an eerie stillness. As we moved through the building, we found patient records scattered on the floor, detailing the harrowing experiences of those who had been confined here. One patient in particular caught my attention, a young woman named Emily Larson. Her records indicated that she had been subjected to extreme isolation and experimental treatments. Her final entry was a chilling account of hearing voices and seeing shadowy figures in her room. She claimed that something malevolent was haunting the facility, and she feared for her life. Emily had vanished without a trace shortly after writing this entry. That night, we set up cameras and recording equipment in various parts of the facility, hoping to capture any evidence of paranormal activity. As the sun set and darkness enveloped Whispering Pines, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. Around midnight, we gathered in the main hall to review the footage from our cameras. What we saw was deeply unsettling. In the footage from one of the old treatment rooms, a faint, shadowy figure appeared in the corner, its outline barely visible. The figure seemed to move towards the camera before vanishing abruptly. We watched the footage several times, trying to find a rational explanation, but none of us could. The sense of being watched grew stronger, and we began to hear faint whispers echoing through the halls. Determined to uncover the truth, we decided to split up and investigate different parts of the facility. Michael and Laura took the east wing, while David and Anna explored the basement. I chose to investigate the solitary confinement cells where Emily Larson had been held. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of trepidation, I made my way down the narrow, dimly lit corridor. The cells were tiny, with heavy metal doors and small barred windows. As I entered Emily's cell, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. The temperature dropped suddenly, and I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned around, but there was nothing there. The whispers grew louder, and I could almost make out words, pleas for help, cries of anguish. I began to document my findings, but my notes were interrupted by a loud bang. The door to the cell had slammed shut, trapping me inside. Panic set in as I tried to open the door, but it was firmly stuck. My flashlight flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. The whispers turned into anguished screams, and I felt a cold, invisible hand brush against my arm. Desperate, I pounded on the door and shouted for help. After what felt like an eternity, Michael and Laura arrived and managed to force the door open. I stumbled out, gasping for breath, my heart racing. We decided to regroup and leave the facility the next morning, convinced that we were dealing with something beyond our understanding. As we packed our equipment, we discovered that all of our recordings had been erased, replaced with static and distorted images. The patient records we had collected were gone, and the symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. The whispers followed us as we left Whispering Pines, a chilling reminder of the horrors we had encountered. Years have passed since our visit to Whispering Pines, but the mystery remains unsolved. Emily Larson's disappearance and the malevolent presence that haunts the facility are questions that continue to elude explanation. The experience left us shaken, and none of us have returned to the field of paranormal research. The terror of Whispering Pines lingers in my mind, a dark enigma that may never be understood.